Hello and welcome to the Badger Cave. Tonight's, or actually this afternoon's episode is installment is on men's issues activism on college campuses with Sage Gerard, who is the founder of KSU Men. It's Kennesaw State University Men. It's a men's group. Why don't you tell us a bit about KSU Men, Sage? Before we
Yeah.
get
In essence, KSU Men is an organization that focuses on a lobbying function, journalism function, and basically offering services to male students on Kennesaw State University. If something bad happened to them, they have a place to go, and they just have a connection. And if we can't help them with something, we know somebody who can. We're the first openly non-feminist organization to be sponsored by a Voice for Men that actually really got up and going on a college campus. And within 1 year, we got to conference carrying capacity, and we just finished up our first conference, Male Students in Peril, at which Karen, Paul Elam, Jonathan Taylor, Janice Fiamengo, and myself spoke. So it's been a really amazing event, and now Kennesaw State University, from my understanding, is the fastest growing non-Greek organization on the campus. And it's been absolutely incredible, but it's also stirred up an immense amount of drama, and it's been a constant battle making sure that no one harms the organization as well.
Okay, well, why don't we, before we get more into that with some questions for Sage, why don't we introduce the rest of the people who are taking part today? I'll start with myself. I'm your host. I founded Honey Badger Radio with Karen Strawn and Hannah Wallen, who are also with us today. I've been a long-time advocate for men's issues, starting in about 2002 with Sock.men, which probably nobody remembers. It's a news group for men's issues, and yeah, and I also write write and draw a webcomic called Xenospora. That's with an X, xenospora.com, and it's sort of a dramatic portrayal of gender issues and social issues, and hopefully entertaining in a comic and science fiction format. So I'll hand the mic over to Karen to introduce herself. Not that she needs an introduction, but...
You always say that. I'm Karen Strawn, Girl Writes What. You can find me under either of those names on YouTube. I do a blog called owningyourshit.blogspot.com, and I've been doing a few more blog posts than I used to, just because I don't have time to do videos, and I've written for A Voice for Men and for other publications, including some sort of semi-mainstream ones. Yeah, I was in Detroit. I was at KSU at their conference, and yeah.
And Hannah Wallen, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and also your connection to KSU?
All right. I'm Hannah Wallen, and I'm the author of BreakingTheGlasses.blogspot.com, and I'm everywhere. I write for A Voice for Men, I write for Honey Badger Radio's blog, I write for Gender Attic, which I haven't done in a while, actually. I'll have to inflict another article on you soon. And, oh gosh, mensright.ca, and I've probably forgotten something in there. Got a vlog, Breaking the Glasses, got a Tumblr account, Breaking the Glasses also. But my connection is that I have been sort of supporting. I've been as supportive as I could of Sage and getting this started and everything in the middle of changing jobs and everything else I've been trying to keep up with. And I went down to the recent conference and everything and was able to witness all of that, and it was absolutely fabulous. It was a really great conference and everything. I love the way everything went. And it was actually great seeing all of the discussion that took place, and not just the speeches, but the actual dialogue that got started. That was amazing. But I'll leave Sage to talk about that, and that's it.
Okay, and let's pull Mike in just to say a bit about himself. Mike.
I was going to say, put the bottle down, Mike.
Hi, yes, I'm Mike. I'm a YouTuber, and I take the piss out of other YouTubers. Very carefully, and as artfully as possible.
And we love you for it.
Yeah.
So just to explain a bit about Honey Badger Radio's involvement with KSU Men, in their recent conference they had some, I guess some would you call them threats to be protested by feminists? Is that what happened, Sage?
Well, what happened was they ended up trying to do a little mini fundraiser to do an art demonstration in the week leading up to the conference, and they were protesting, in particular, a Voice for Men's presence on campus, since through Paul Elam, Dean Esme, and all them. And they felt that a Voice for Men was bringing the wrong message about discussions on rape. They disagreed with the Voice for Men's premise that we lived in a culture of rape hysteria, and they wanted to. They rehashed a lot of statistics about rape, some true, some false, and they did this huge array of panties and boxer shorts and children's underwear hung all around the campus green. And there's a mattress that they say represents solidarity in the middle of the campus green. They got sheets with the stats on them. You can't really read them because of the way the light plays off of them. But the art demonstration went about a week. Steve Brule came down a little bit early, and he caught some of the footage, got some interviews, and I believe he's still processing his stuff. But there, at the conference, when the conference actually happened, there was no open demonstration. In fact, it was handled very civilly.
Yeah, but when we heard about the potential protests, what we did at Honey Badger Radio is we sent a banner of support with basically the faces of some of the women who were involved in Honey Badger Radio, saying the women of Badger Pod support KSU Men, and we also sent our very own Rachel. Karen was invited to speak, as you know, is pretty much expected, but Rachel to help be a visible presence at KSU Men and hopefully dissuade people from protesting too much, and I hope that helped.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's sort of how we got it. Well, I mean, we've been involved with KSU Men, like, just because we're friends with Sage for a while now, so that's also okay. I'm ordering, but it was good to see a successful conference. And what are some of the activities that you've undertaken under the banner of KSU Men to improve the campus life for men at Kennesaw State University, Sage?
That is the biggest possible question you could ask me. But I'll go ahead and give you a very high-level overview. First of all, there was making a more equitable IPV center on campus. They have a IPV center that, in essence, promotes their services only to women. And although the IPV center on campus does offer counseling toward men as well, the men on campus don't even realize they have that function. I didn't even know they had that function until I had a chance meeting with the director of the center. And I got in touch with the assistant dean, Dr. Bob Maddox, and had a conversation with him, found out that we could set up a men's center on campus for 2015. And that's kind of going to be our big project for this year. We have there's also the Rape Aggression Defense Systems presence on campus. That's a network of self-defense courses that essentially sells its program along with the equipment and instructor training to the United States and Canada. They have a lot of messages that are consistent with, the Step Up campaign and things like that, where men are responsible not only just for staying out of conflict themselves, but getting into conflict to protect women. So we wanted to talk about the promotion they offer there. They had some propaganda in there. We found some information in their manual that looked like plagiarism, and we want to have an investigation on that and see if we could hire, through the collaboration with KSU, a new local martial arts dojo or something else to replace that program. Then, of course, the other activities are just more involve me more than the organization. It involves, like, my debate with an individual named Brian Klein on the subject, Did Feminism Get It Wrong? And just anything I've organized in regards to the conference. And, of course, my thanks go out to all of you for all of your support, because it's been absolutely outstanding.
Okay, and what do you plan for the future of men's issues activism on college campuses?
Well, obviously, I can't predict the future. But what I would like to have happen is I want KSU Men to grow to the point where it doesn't depend on anybody there. Unfortunately, as it stands right now, the one big disappointment I have with it is that nobody wanted the president's seat with our recent election, so I'm still serving as the president right now. And one of the things I really wanted to do was to make it that KSU Men didn't need me. So if KSU Men could survive without me and the students wanted to take it and run it with themselves, that's my goal. I want it to be an independent entity of its own that can survive, and the values are now so instilled in the campus that they see its value and they want to persist with it themselves. But there's still a very big campus culture of conjecture and fear that make that difficult. So my plans right now are to help bring KSU Men to that point where people can openly support it without fearing what might happen to them, because that's still an issue right now. And then there's, of course, just the men's center on campus, as I was telling you about earlier, and trying to find different ways to just continue opening that discourse on gender. Karen, in her speech, talked about a blue ribbon campaign to bring awareness to male cancers, got in touch with Harry Crouch from NCFM, and asked for his opinion on what we could do to spread that as well. And then just outside of those awareness-raising campaigns, it's just modify whatever programs we can, get some sort of bureaucracy moving in order to build a less gynocentric implementation of campus services.
Well, I mean, and just to clarify, NCFM is the National Coalition of Free Men, and when Sage is referring to gynocentrism, he's saying that it's sort of a situation where there's this very traditional notion of manhood and womanhood, where men are stoic and strong, and women are vulnerable and in need of assistance. And the result of that is that men tend to not get assistance when they require it. So that's sort of the basic baseline gynocentrism is society wants to help women and endeavors to help women and tends to ignore where men need help. Would you agree with that, Sage, or did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add to it is that gynocentrism is just a woman-centric worldview, to the exclusion and neglect of men. I mean, that's pretty much all that I understand it to be, but that baseline traditionalism certainly is a very strong basis for that as well.
Well, I mean, it doesn't really matter whether you're a traditionalist or a feminist. You're gynocentric, right? I mean, there's really no difference between the knight in shining armor in the days of chivalry and Emma Watson's he for she campaign, right? Where men are supposed to pledge to end violence and discrimination against women and girls.
Except that Emma Watson has removed the middleman.
No.
Well, there is one other difference.
Also, Emma Watson has removed any kind of idea of you get sort of respect and reward for putting women.
That's the other difference.
Yeah.
That's the other difference.
You basically get to put women and girls first and then get told you're an oppressor. So.
Yeah, it's that's essentially a rundown of what gynocentrism is. That's just to make sure that this remains accessible to people who are maybe new to these terms, and to sort of avoid the jargon. But so what has been your biggest obstacles in attempting to bring men's issues to college campuses and get the dialogue started on how men are vulnerable? And I think we can all agree that this idea of stoicism, male stoicism, is a very traditional role. Mm-hmm. And bringing attention to how men are vulnerable is less traditional, and yet feminists seem to be playing the part of the traditionalists in this particular narrative. So could you tell us a bit about the opposition and who has been opposing bringing attention to men's issues on college campuses?
Sure. The biggest obstacle I've been facing, and there are limits to how much I can elaborate on this, unfortunately, but since there's an internal conflict on the legalities between this one department on campus where the gender studies program resides and KSU Men. So on I'll share what I can share. On campus, there's this department called the Interdisciplinary Studies Department. The Interdisciplinary Studies Department is where you can find everything from peace studies to cultural studies, African American studies, gender studies, and all that. Now, so the entire, every bit of the social justice perspective is located in this department. And they're the ones that I guess you could say you expect were the ones that reacted most viciously to the presence of KSU Men. Now, when I was building KSU Men, this department has made an active, organized effort, and I'm talking about faculty here, to spread rumors about KSUM, get students to file reports, get students to, and just they've come and bothered our faculty sponsorships, our faculty sponsors, scared them off. They've been, and they don't stop. They're still going on today. And one of the goals that we're trying to have here is just basically they can think what they want, but they need to stop using the system to try to hurt people. We have back when I was working more with when I was working more with, I guess you could say, in essence, just spreading the message of humanitarian non-feminism. We had I learned that one of the faculty members there sent an email to our first faculty sponsor saying that we are a subsidiary of A Voice for Men, and that, you know, A Voice for Men is a hate group, and that we're in essence going to basically be harmful to the campus. And unfortunately, my first faculty sponsor believed that right out, even though I provided exculpatory evidence, and refused to have any further association with me or with KSU Men. And the rumor ended up spreading through another source that I don't know is from ISD or not, and got the student media interested in us. Okay, and the student media came to me, and once our second faculty advisor learned that the media was starting to get interested, he got freaked out about what his boss might think of this, and then left. And the SPLC allegations and things like that were, again, they were just disproven. And a reporter there at campus was really awesome. She wrote a news piece that said, yeah, you know, that allegation just doesn't hold water. But that pissed off other people in the media, and it pissed off other professors. And so more opinion pieces about KSUM showed up. I think we appeared in the campus paper, the Sentinel, about 4 or 5 times in this one semester. And opinion pieces were written criticizing KSU Men very openly, which is fine. But I learned eventually that the Interdisciplinary Studies, ISD, was the source of a lot of the, you know, grief that has been experienced by KSUM and the loss of its sponsorships. So I ended up emailing the source, and I said, hey, you know, there's this real big chain of events here that kind of started with your email. What is your schedule like? Can we talk about this and see if we can work something out? And fast forward past a bunch of other details later, I learned that they filed 3 police reports against me. They said that I was conspiring to murder women. They said I was sending potentially threatening emails. I was hiding in the bushes, taking pictures of people as they walked by, basically. And it was a huge headache. And I learned that one of them came over and started bugging my current advisor for KSUM. And they're not supposed to be doing that, because our advisors are advisors. They are not liable for anything a student organization does. So I sent this individual an email saying, please do not bug our advisors. If you have a grievance, please bring it to my attention. None of them ever once emailed me or came to a meeting, by the way. Not once. I ended up getting a very scary letter from the legal division on campus saying, by the way, if you contact Interdisciplinary Studies one more time, or if you approach their offices, you will be seen as retaliating to these allegations they just made against you, and charges will be pressed. So, yeah, I'm freaked out. And this is, I look at the allegations, and they cited my putting stickers up promoting AVFM across the KSU as evidence that I am having fantasies about hurting women and things of that nature. And this was probably the first time that I was reduced to tears, because I couldn't believe that these people were saying such horrible things. And, you know, it's kind of like one of those things where, you know how if you look at like a violent movie, you know, the violence doesn't bother you because it's theatrical. You can tell it isn't real. But when you actually see violence, it horrifies you. You don't know what to do about it. It's kind of like the same thing with the hatred aspect of this. You can kind of see theatrical hatred, like through angry tweets or YouTube comments. But when you're holding an actual police report or a legal division letter basically saying these awful things, and they're trying to get you in serious trouble, that really hurts. And they've scared off, I mean, they have successfully scared off people from my organization. They wanted people to be scared of it. And their fear-mongering just pretty much knew no bounds to this. And So my goal right now is to just basically, they can say what they want, they can think what they want. That's not my concern. My concern is they need to stop bothering my advisor, they need to stop scaring my members, and they need to stop trying to use the system to crush people they don't like. And that's the biggest obstacle. Professors gone mad.
Wow. And of course, they would say that the system assists you and harms them.
They accuse me of creating a hostile environment. You know, it gets to the point where when the hostile environment accuses you of making a hostile environment, I mean, what can you say, really?
Yeah, it is absurdity, but I just find it ironic that these people, these individuals of a certain merit, would conjecture that it's actually men who control the environment, therefore they're justified in threatening and being hostile towards a man, bringing attention to men's issues. They would say that, you know, men have a voice everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, men's vulnerabilities don't have a voice. When men are useful, they have a voice. Now, but anyway, Mike has a small question, so let's bring him in.
Yes. I noticed you used the phrase non-feminism earlier, and also on the logo. I saw the logo, very good, excellent logo, by the way, apart from the owl.
Thank you.
Loads of people like owls, and that's fine. And you went with the phrasing non-feminism, and I thought, well, I've never heard it called that before. It's usually anti-feminism, and I thought, well, but you've just done a fairly good job of explaining why something needs to be put in about, look, feminism is, you know, it's specifically not helpful to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I wondered if you would take us through the process as how you got to the phrase non-feminism as opposed to anti-feminism, for instance.
Right. Okay. When it comes to non-feminist perspectives, in essence, we wanted to have that space available where we could have specialized discussion on what gender would be through say scientific perspectives, evolutionary, biological, and you could end up with people like Dr. Adam Jones, somebody of that ilk, who are kind of kiss feminism's ass sometimes, but at the same time they offer very thoughtful critiques about what feminism has done and what feminism does to corrupt either a peer review process or anything of that nature. So we wanted to also make sure that we have enough space open for people to offer their criticisms without feeling like they need to be forced to take a side on, are you pro-feminism or anti-feminism? We're not forcing them to take a side on that. So non-feminism in essence is a way of saying non-ideological. And we also arrived at the term non-feminist because since feminism is so fashionable for a lot of people in this age bracket, we know that saying non-feminist would be a hell of a lot more marketable than non-ideological if we put it right in the logo. But it is, in essence, by the way, we're not going to look at this through this lens. That's what we're saying.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, feminism is a position, and it's a set of hypotheses, and so saying that you're anti-feminist is basically saying that position and those hypotheses are wrong, whereas non-feminist is, I'm just not going to consider those. I'm going to think about it outside of any kind of set of hypotheses or any kind of, you know, preordained position, right?
Yeah, there is that. The way I've always looked at it was non-feminist would be I'm not going to look at it through those lens. Like I do reject those, but anti-feminist also would go for the more political activist position of I think we need to start discrediting those who would defend those hypotheses when they're obviously not defensible.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I do think that it's probably a lot more palatable for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's but Hannah does want to get in here, so why don't we pull Hannah in? Hannah, you got the
Right.
mic.
Before I say the thing I was going to say, I'm gonna weigh on the non-feminist versus anti-feminist thing as well. A lot of times, calling yourself a non-feminist is less threatening simply because you're not disregarding necessarily that lens so much as stating that you're not limiting yourself to it. Because if you're looking at something through a feminist perspective, you really can't look at it through any other perspective. Mm-hmm. And that sort of leads into what I was going to say, which is that that's their problem here. Looking at things from a feminist perspective makes it offensive to them if somebody looks at it through any other perspective, to the level where I mean, what you're describing here is abuse. They are using abusive tactics. I would actually put this almost at a mafia level, minus the direct violence, but they're using intimidation tactics. They're using organized crime intimidation tactics, and this, in a way, it totally undermines one of their biggest claims related to men's rights activism. That being that men's rights activism on the topic of false allegations is illegitimate because false allegations don't happen. Well, this whole thing has been a giant use of false allegations to try to intimidate your organization into shutting up.
Right,
You know?
and on that note, for those who are curious about it, all the allegations against me, they haven't stuck. I mean, the investigators have concluded that they have no evidence by which they could discipline me. So in that respect, I'm okay. But I am still facing additional restrictions on my speech, and they still have no contacts established by the school and not necessarily the individuals making the allegations, which means there is still a systemic presence to it. Even though, so it's always given me that question of, if they know I haven't done anything wrong, what is this?
Systematic institutionalized oppression, which is what they would claim that women face, but in reality, they're using it and doing it. It's systematic institutionalized oppression.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, if you look at any other situation, say totally outside of this, say it has to do with somebody's personal property, and there's a personal property dispute, and one of the two opposing sides in a personal property dispute were to do to the other side what is being done to you, the side being subjected to this would file a complaint in civil court for vexatious litigation. Or malicious prosecution, depending on where they are from, where they live, and I've seen that done. I've even seen it done in divorce disputes. I actually wrote about that, but that really, this is starting to look very much like that case where the individual who wanted to silence the other side, the individual who wanted to handicap the other side, was simply throwing anything and everything, no matter how ridiculous, that they possibly could, to tie the other side up in order to prevent the other side from simply doing what they were doing. And that's what I'm seeing here with you, is that they're just simply trying to intimidate and to tie you up, prevent you from being able to focus on your work.
Well, what really concerned me was when for those of you who haven't seen, I did that debate with an individual named Brian Klein, and during this debate, he tried a character assassination attempt, and he asked inflammatory questions that could have put me in physical danger, such as, Sage, do you realize that there are women on campus who feel so afraid of you they need a cop to escort them from their car to their job? This was the first time I heard of that. I never really, it was weird to me, but I found out that that was one of the texts of the reports that were filed against me by interdisciplinary studies. And what was interesting to me was Brian knew about this report before I did. And it made me wonder if Brian was acting as a proxy. And that if I could demonstrate that connection, then of course that is a whole other can of worms in itself. But that it only gave me a suspicion. I don't have the proof in front of me right now.
It certainly points to some collusion.
When I was looking, one of the things that's very nice, and I am very glad I have the rights to this, here in the state of Georgia, we have the Open Records Act, which is a more specialized version of freedom of information. And I have the right to request correspondence sent by faculty, emails. So I've been looking at the emails they've been sending by search parameters, and I saw that they're actually having meetings specifically to address KSUM as if it was a problem on campus. They've used that word. It's a problem. And I know they're having meetings. I know they're trying things, and they've organized communications to try to scare off our advisors. And of course, that's a threat, because it's every student organization on campus has to use an advisor in order to get access to campus services. So, for example, I can't rent cameras for events if our advisor isn't coordinating it. I can't organize an emergency election without my advisor facilitating that with the Student Life Department. So removing advisors is basically trying to strip out the institutional core of a student organization, and they're very vicious about it. It's like a wolf going for the throat. They've not stopped once, and trying to get them to stop is what I'm trying to do right now.
Okay, so before we continue, sorry to interrupt, but Karen, I'm going to need you to mute because we're getting a very subtle echo, and I think it's possibly on your end. Thank you. I do have a question. I know, Sage, you were in a debate with someone. Did you guys already cover that? I was actually moderating.
Well, we didn't cover it as much as I wanted to yet, but I did make a couple mentions to it. So yeah, for those of you who have not seen it yet, I did a debate with somebody on the subject, did feminism get it wrong? And I took the affirmative. So the individual I debated was named Brian Klein. Brian Klein is the president and I believe also the founder of Atheists United, which is the kind of like the staple secular organization on campus. Now, you can watch that debate on YouTube. It's on my channel. And it's also on Kennesaw State University Men's channel. Now, Brian Klein agreed to go public with everything. He I also have him in writing saying that our correspondence was subject to publication as well. And Brian responded very, very poorly to the public reaction to the debate, his performance in particular. And what he did, the debate was published on A Voice for Men as well. And after that debate went a little bit, people left their comments, and not many people enjoyed Brian's performance at all. And so one of the people who commented was this guy named Isaac T. Quill. And Isaac T. Quill made a comment about how Brian was dragged up at home and how he could have certain feelings about me. And Brian was so offended by this comment that he ended up going straight to the campus cops to try to he advised that he was going to get a restraining order against me. And he ended up having he threw a tantrum, basically. He even carbon copied me on an email to the Student Life Department when he was requesting permission to ban me from Atheists United, because I wanted to be a member of Atheists United. I like secularism. And turns out he couldn't legally do either of those things. He had no cause to get a restraining order, and he had no cause to ban me. But he wasn't satisfied with that. So he ended up, I learned that Brian filed a police report against me, or rather, he went to the cops and they filed the report. And then I just was hearing about just more things he was saying about me. And it was consistent with a lot of the allegations I've been hearing from interdisciplinary studies. He repeated allegations that I was going around harassing women with no proof. So it's, and what really got interesting about it was that when Brian made these inflammatory allegations, he pissed off a lot of people at the AVFM community. Since other students have been hurt from vigilante action, they wanted Brian to kind of, own up to what he did. And Brian, and Paul posted an article about that. He posted an article, Should Fortune Favor Brian Klein? We found out that the guy has a criminal record. He has, and he's just not what he advertises himself to be. Brian's response was to throw a massive tantrum, and he ended up posting a personal home address of a Paul Elam, not the one we know, but a different Paul Elam, thinking it was the Paul Elam from AVFM, trying to get people to go after him. And so he put a complete stranger at risk in his attempt to basically try to, the concern was he's putting other people at risk for his sake, and he just did it again in front of all of us. He doesn't get it. And he ended up just cursing up a storm. He reactively resigned as the president of Atheists United, and he's established several no contacts with me. He requested a no contact with me, and I respected that. Then he broke it. Then when I responded to him and tried to level with him, he requested another no contact. Then he broke it again and started calling me obsessively, like 4 or 5 times in a couple hours. And he's out of his mind. You can watch him in his comment section. He's completely erratic. He actually started calling me names in one comment, then hit me up for money in another one. I don't know what the hell his problem is, but I don't think he's stable. And we ended up having to, I had to call a cop to station himself by the last case I'm meeting of the semester. We needed to have some kind of protection there. And we had and I went to the student life department. I said, well, what am I going to do about this? And they're actually considering now. They've told me that they're going to consider giving me banning rights. And typically students don't get that. You're not typically, everybody has a state protected right to participate in any student organization they want. But from what the department head was telling me, this was the first time this has ever happened. And if I get banning rights, this would probably be the first time any student at KSU has ever been banned over something like this. I don't know that, but that's what it sounded like to me. And but basically, we put all the KSU students on high alert because we now know this guy is willing to take somebody's name to the cops if he doesn't like them personally, and he's willing to spread those accusations, and he's willing to basically live in a fantasy land and just try to hurt people. And with that and his criminal record, we're saying to KSU students, be very careful around him, keep a recorder on you at all times, watch your ass. And if you have any incidents, report it. So I'm trying to step away from that, right? I'm trying to forget this guy because something's wrong with him. And
I would, I totally get you, and I would add that might be an issue, men's rights issue on college campuses, is just recognizing when you need to be careful about false accusers. I mean, I imagine that not just white, in particular, it falls quite heavily on black men, but of course white men are also caught in that net. But here I'm going to cede the floor to Hannah because she did request it.
Well, actually, the one thing I wanted to say about this is to emphasize the danger of proxy violence. You had mentioned that he put out A. Paul Elam's name, and I don't think, like, necessarily everybody that might watch this is aware of the level of danger that presents. Because there's not just objection. There's not just people saying, well, you're an asshole because I don't like what you said, or I'm going to complain about you to the police, or things like that. There is the very real danger that because someone knows where a person with that name lives, that without confirming anything, without finding their information out, factually, without getting things straight, that they could show up and actually physically assault that person. And that's not, that's happened in the past to other people within the men's rights movement. And it's something that...
it's like you're turning the average citizen into a CIA spook.
Yeah, it's launching people at other people as weapons. It's weaponized sympathy, weaponized gynocentrism. And this really speaks to what the feminists on Sage's campus are like, that they feel so entitled to control men's dialogue and student dialogue, and so offended that the young men on campus want to have discussion about men's issues outside of the control of meddling women, that they would launch violence like this, launch the potential for proxy violence, and that they would, if they are colluding. And to me, just the fact that he knew about the information in an email that really he wouldn't have had any business seeing if there wasn't collusion taking place, that is a very suspicious thing, and it's something that probably ought to be further looked into. But that entitlement and that tendency to try to use other people to silence a group like that is particularly heinous and very dangerous.
Yeah, it's been a bit terrifying. There was there was an interesting bit, and I wanted to kind of touch on this if you all don't mind, because I'm sure that some people who've been following KSU Men wanted to ask questions about it, but they never got a real chance to. During the Male Students in Peril conference, there's another student organization. They're the ones that organized that art demonstration. They're called Yes Body. Now, Yes Body is a predominantly feminist organization that wants to talk about gender issues. And one of the co-presidents stepped up and offered a public apology in the middle of the conference during my Q&A session. And you'll hear that once I'm done processing the Q&A footage for the conference. And this isn't the first time they've done that. They also offered another public apology through their Tumblr blog. And this was to their credit, because it was the Yes Body had a help from other people that went a little too far with their brand and gave me some trouble. And they apologized for that. They apologized for what they thought was a presence on campus. And of course, I told them basically that, if you're not responsible for it, then, I don't need the apology for that. But at the same time, I wanted to challenge them to actually do the work necessary to basically offer the integrity we've been wanting to see for a very long time. And I've been having the sneaking suspicion for, as I did with many other feminists that want to say that they're the real ones, what are they going to do, right? How are they going to address the lack of integrity that's been documented? And I had the sneaking suspicion that they were offering the apology and offering assistance for the sake of PR, as opposed to for the sake of because they actually care. And they donated all the underwear that they set up for that exhibit, and I donated that to the Care Center for Homeless Students. But that was pretty much like the one contribution they did. And outside of that, there's been very tense arguments and conversations, and it's just I'm still not convinced that I'm just not convinced that they really, really care. It's more of that whole I'm here as an activist, but I'm only going to do things that make me look good to my friends kind of activism. And yeah, that's kind of so it's kind of on the fence there. But there's still, they're all this one big network, right? I know that Brian Klein went to another group called the Non-Normative Anti-Assimilationists, or I think they flipped that name around now, but they have another one. I know the non-normative people are associated with Yes Body. Yes Body is in touch with the LGBTIQ community, and they are all have some contact with interdisciplinary studies. So it's this all big mass, and that's kind of what we kind of have to deal with. And I'm thinking Yes Body's kind of that's still whole. We're the pretty young white girls who will tell you, everything's okay, we're about puppies and flowers, but behind the scenes, we're trying to destroy you.
Well, I mean, okay. She did apologize for all of that stuff, but, Naomi Wolf, when I met her, right, when I first met her, she was very friendly. She was very touchy-feely. She put her hand on my arm. She leaned in. She smiled. She said, "You're an anti-feminist? What did we do to you? Oh, you poor thing." And I was like, you guys didn't do anything to me, right? But her tune sure changed the moment that I started challenging her point of view, to the point where she eventually called me a rape apologist and dropped an F-bomb right in the middle of a panel discussion. Like there is a I think there's a very potential dark side to people who are all sort of sunshine and lollipops and touchy-feely and just sort of inclusiveness and kumbaya, right? I mean, like there is something underneath all of that, and often it doesn't take a whole lot to bring it out. It didn't take a whole lot for me with Naomi Wolf. To bring that out in her, and she's like a kindergarten teacher. She was talking to the audience like a kindergarten teacher, right? She's just all like good feelings and just positivity and all of that until I started talking. Yeah, and then it was completely different. And I think people who are very, very attracted to those kinds of things like Yes Body, where it really is, let's reinforce positivity, blah, blah, blah. I think it actually probably they're attracted to those types of things because they have some very negative thoughts and very negative feelings just lurking there under, like, it wouldn't surprise me if half the members of Yes Body cut cut themselves.
Hmm.
It would really not surprise me. Because the reason they're attracted to those kinds of organizations is because they're desperate to feel okay, right? And the reason they're desperate to feel okay is because they really don't feel okay.
Hmm.
So I just you look at people who behave in those ways, and it's amazing how ruthless they can be when they feel threatened. And when they feel the need to defend something. So I would not necessarily trust Yes Body to be an ally or somebody who's going to support you or who's going to tolerate you.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into what I was saying earlier about people might having questions. Like, if somebody were to ever say, "Is KSU Men about to cooperate with a feminist group?" My response would be that if they were going to offer like some level of integrity, like something at least somewhat resembling Christina Hoff Sommers, it'd be like a probationary thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's see what you can do. But now that I've had a little more experience with it, I'm getting the impression that they don't really care. It's still more of that whole, it's about your image, right? It's about image. It's about making sure that political activism is about making sure everybody agrees on something and saying the nice things, so
Yeah.
that whenever you disagree, they can easily paint you as the evil, privileged prick out to oppress.
Yeah.
They don't want you to cooperate with them. They don't want to cooperate with you.
Yeah. And I got my privilege lecture from them, so that's there.
Amazing. That's just, and I think it pulls back to what I was saying before about how they will assert, even though you are facing a hostile institution and you're facing potential criminal, like these letters coming from the police for things that you didn't actually do, and this entire edifice of like a gunboat arrayed against you. And they're shouting at you from the precipice of the top, "You're privileged!" It's like in Tieman Square, that if the tank operator had popped the lid and said, "You're privileged to be standing there." It's like, not because just because you exist and you can actually say these things, that doesn't give you privilege. Anyway. But what I was going to say, I'd speak to what Karen said, is I find that people who engage in that sort of immediate attempt at friendliness often are pretty abusive under the surface. Personally, I don't trust people who are that friendly right off the bat. But yeah,
I've been considering ever since I saw that debate between you and Brian. I've been considering doing a video response to it. But the more I learn about Brian, the more I reach the point of, I don't think that there's even a name for this law yet. It's one thing to mock people who are obviously just selfish and hypocritical, even in ideological ways. It's another to mock someone. It's one thing to insinuate comedically that they're mentally unwell in some way, but it's another thing when they actually do appear to. You reach a point where it becomes not quite kosher to mock them.
No,
I mean?
I really don't think it. At first, I thought this guy was just being, dumb. Now, I really do think something is seriously wrong with him, and the idea really is right now, basically, from my perspective and from A Voice for Men's perspective, tell KSU students, be careful around this guy. That's pretty much where it stands. If Brian did not, blow up any more than he already did, and he just kind of stuck to, his claims without going into that additional control mechanisms or things like that, I mean, people could probably keep mocking him, but now the tone's completely changed. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's just like, yeah, just careful around him. He's not stable.
Something else that I think cannot be overemphasized. Some of the tactics being used here are illegal. It is illegal to file a false police report. It is a violation of the law.
Let me stop you. This is a campus police report.
Is it a campus police report? They didn't go to the
Yes,
on
campus it's much more open. See, when you go to when you do like a police actual county jurisdiction, then what you're saying applies. But in campus, basically anybody can file anything, and if they don't,
See, that's a whole other can of worms.
yes, just let
Because
me know that for the context purposes.
That actually brings up something that we probably ought to do a totally different show about, the whole Campus Save Act and the push behind that to move criminal accusations from the handling of official police to campus police and campus judiciary. It's all to make it easier to do things like this to people.
Right. Here's how it works here at KSU. If you just think that somebody's breath stinks, you can file a police report there.
And there's probably no oversight.
Well, what they do is they will have an officer investigate it. They have some detectives there on staff. And if they find that there's nothing actionable there or it's not a criminal matter, they will just finish filing the report, and then it becomes public record. The reason I even have the reports about me is because they found that there was nothing to do because I didn't do anything wrong. But if for some reason somebody did do something wrong, and that was something that's as long as it's under investigation, it's not public record. It's only when the case essentially concludes that it becomes such. And yeah, here's the thing that really disturbs me more than anything else. So there's kind of this overarching, determination made by the legal division when I brought my side to this from the interdisciplinary studies people, because they're the ones that filed all the reports. They filed not only campus police reports but also university system level reports, which are the university is legally obligated to investigate by the attorney level at that point. And when they basically said that I'm just courting controversy and I'm just bitching about what people are saying about me, but that's not what I'm doing at all. And it's the thing that I'm trying to point out to these people is, look, I mean, accusing me of conspiring to murder women and fantasizing about doing so, that ain't just criticism and practice of free speech. Sending me a no contact enforced by the school ain't practice of free speech, because that's what they're trying to paint this as. And it's a very 1984-esque situation where they keep manipulating the definitions of this stuff. And it's been incredibly frustrating because the checks and balances as it is, on the one hand, I'm thankful that no charges have been pressed against me, because in that sense I'm very lucky. Other students and other men I could think of have been in much worse situations. But on the other hand, I'm very frustrated that the status quo being maintained, in essence, prevents me from voicing my concerns. I've never once felt understood. No one has ever repeatedly consulted me about my side to different responses, although I know ISD has been consulted multiple times. It's not been a good situation. And there's also been that underlying men's rights question to this. If I'm not allowed to speak and I'm the founder of this organization, how far can KSU Men actually go? So this is a very important fight right now. And getting past this obstacle is going to be extremely important. But I kind of derailed you. I'm sorry. So more about
No. That was a very important thing to say, and it was good that you said it. But I do have a question regarding your campus. Is there a process by which they handle this type of pattern of behavior? I mean, here you have, and to frame this, if I were to be like these people, and I were to file false accusations with the literal police, the actual police, like the police in my area, and I did this repeatedly, they have recourse to do something about it. There's recourse because, first of all, it's a waste of the police resources, and in addition to harassing the individual I'd be harassing if I did that, it's very expensive. Now, I'm sure on your campus this has a cost. And your campus police probably are using resources to deal with this. And even if the campus is so callous as to not care about the harassment of their students by other students, and to not care about the damage to the educational environment that this presents, they should at least care about the money being spent and the resources being used? Do they actually not have anything in place to deal with an abuse of their system?
Here's where it stands right now. They aren't really doing much of anything, and I can't really elaborate on this right now because there's still that USG investigation going on, and since it's not concluded, I don't think it would be kosher of me to be sharing what I learned about the process at this point. I don't want to, jeopardize anything related to my investigation. But what I will do is I can answer your question in more detail once the USG report that they've been filing is finished, and then I can kind of follow up on that on either another show or on a YouTube video.
What is the USG? What does USG stand
University
for?
System of Georgia. That's just what it says.
Okay, universities. Just because don't want to get too Ackerman heavy.
Yeah.
Well, we're
sort of. We do another show.
Yeah, sure. We can do another show, but we are coming to the end of the hour here, and I know I don't know if that's Karen's listening face or her I'm about to take a nap face. So so let's call it a day for today, and we can definitely do another show, a take two, as it were, and discuss more of this issue. And I think that what you mentioned about what you feel needs to happen on college campuses for there to be a future of men's issues, I think that's a really great point to end out on.
Well,
and
one closing note I can offer here is, first, you can follow any updates on the KSU Men blog. That's ksumen.wordpress.com, all spelled out. And what I think, one observation I want to offer here is, I've heard a lot of people complain about campus police departments, but through my experience here, I've noticed a lot more corruption from the legal division than I have the cops. The cops really, here there was a very clear separation from them just, doing their jobs versus the people who are really pulling the levers. And I will have a lot to say, but at this moment, I have limits on how much I can share.
And we understand that. So I want to thank everybody who's taken part. Karen, Hannah, Mike, and yeah, I guess I'll thank myself as well. Alison. Thank you, Alison. Oh, yeah. And thank you also, Sage, for fighting the good fight and for coming on today and talking to us about it. And yet we will schedule another hangout for this on this particular topic. And I wanted to do a shout out to our listeners. If you want to get alerts to when we're doing hangouts, please go to our Google Plus page and follow us, and I will be sure to add you to the list so that you can get an invite and you'll know directly when we're actually going to have a hangout and going to talk about some issues. So the Google Plus page is basically the Google Plus info plus / Honey Badger Radio. So yeah, go there and add us, and we will be sure to get you notifications for when we are having a hangout, because I know that a few people have asked me, and that's really the best way to find out when we're having a hangout. So once again, that's Honey Badger Radio on Google Plus. And I want to thank everybody who's participated. I want to thank our volunteers in the background who helped me do some of the technical and logistical aspects of putting on these hangouts. And thank our listeners and our patrons who make this all possible. So thank you, and good evening. Have a good afternoon, and good luck wherever you are advancing the cause of men's issues, and also recognizing women's agency and responsibility to men. So have a good one.